Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another 585 Sports Takes Shorts video for you. And we're not going to waste any time. We're hopping right into it. You see the backgrounds, you see the funny LeBron image. LeBron James has signed with the Philadelphia 76ers for a 2-year, $8 million deal that includes a player option in the second year. And Cole, give me your gut reaction.
Um, this is a time where I'm truly lost for words. I'm dumbstruck. I have almost nothing to say, but also the exact same time, everything to say about this. I think this changes the entire landscape of not only the Eastern Conference in the NBA, but the entire league. And I am just so excited to break this entire signing down from how it started with Brad Stevens just cooking the worst sandwich of all time, trading Jaylen Brown and the 76ers and almost spoon feeding the 76ers another great player in LeBron James to now where we're at with LeBron finally putting pen to the paper and signing to Philadelphia, which, by the way, I'm a Boston guy. I hate Philly fans, but you have to be an idiot to say they're not some of the best fans we have in the NBA. So LeBron's going to have a ton of fun there. As long as everyone can stay healthy.
Yeah, this is just wild NBA news. Feels like we've been waiting on this signing forever, and I thought maybe next week it was going to come. It comes on Friday, July 24th. We knew he wasn't going to do it over the weekend. There's too much other stuff going on. He picked a nice weekday. The World Cup chatter had quieted down, and the world is now focused on LeBron James. I don't think there's a bigger event in the sports calendar that we could talk about for longer than we can talk about LeBron James signing to Philadelphia. And the first thing I thought of when I saw this signing, somehow, some way, I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know in what way. I don't know if it's going to be because of injuries, of guys playing bad, or whatever. Just my gut is telling me that the Philadelphia 76ers are not winning the NBA title. I don't know what's going to happen, what's going to be the reasoning, but I just do not see this team finally getting over the hype and holding the Larry O'Brien trophy once the 2027 season comes to an end.
Okay, so that's actually really interesting. So are you saying they're not in the picture at all for you, whether it's for outside reasons or not, but you just don't think they can happen?
No, I
Or
think I think the 76ers definitely have the talent, obviously. I mean, look at their starting five now to compete for an NBA title. They might lose in the first round, they might lose in game 7 of the NBA finals. I don't know how it's happening. I just do not see this team winning the title. Just you know how we had that gut feeling about the Knicks beating the Spurs in the finals? I have an even
yep.
stronger gut feeling that for whatever reason it's not going to work out.
Well, flush that gut feeling away because with LeBron, you absolutely have no idea. But what about the next year? What if he stays and picks up that player option? They just need 1 year where everyone's healthy, and I think they have a real shot.
I don't know. This team is just giving me like the vibes you get from a team like the Cleveland Browns or the Detroit Lions, where it just feels like it's not going to happen no matter who they have on their team. That's sort of the vibes I've gotten with this Joel Embiid 76ers era and this whole trust the process era. But if anyone can change that, it's the GOAT.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think you just said it. If anyone can change it, it is LeBron. I think he has a chance of changing it. I'm not going to sit here and say that I think they're the favorite to win it all. But as of right now, as ridiculous as this may sound, I'm putting them at 3, maybe 4 for longest odds at winning it all. I have the Spurs and Thunder. And then I think this is where Philly falls at 3. I do think Denver's maybe the better team overall. However, with Denver, you have to assume that they're getting by either a Thunder or Spurs or both at the exact same time. So that's the tricky part for them. So I think 76ers fall number 3 on my list for NBA champion odds.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you kind of have to include the Spurs and the Thunder at 1 and 2. For me, you can't leave out the defending champs and the Knicks. I don't think they caught lightning in a bottle. I think this is a legit New York Knicks team. Do I think they're as good as they played this past postseason? Probably not. This was the third seed in a weaker Eastern Conference than the West, but at the same time, we can't just neglect what they did because they're bringing back pretty much all the crucial pieces of their championship run. I know Mitchell Robinson is elsewhere, but they were able to bring back Shamit and all the Nova guys. So I don't think you can quite count them out, but this did just make the Eastern Conference a whole lot more interesting and definitely more of a gauntlet for whoever is going to get through it Because that's the thing you could say about the Knicks. Well, I don't think it was a fraudulent run. Did they have necessarily the hardest path to the final? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think it was a mistake that they were holding up the Larry O'Brien at the end of the year. However, you said it perfectly. The Knicks' path was so easy. I mean, it was kind of what we saw to the New England Patriots in the AFC this year, except they were actually able to beat the big bad wolf at the end of their turn. And this year, it's not going to be anything like that. Assuming Kawhi, the trade goes through or the signing goes through, and everything with Steve Ballmer and Kawhi gets figured out, and he's on the Raptors, that's a pretty tough team to beat. However, LeBron with the Raptors, we know how that story ends. No matter what team LeBron's on, if he's up and going up against the Raptors, just call it a series. And then Miami Heat, I don't think they're this amazing world beater team now that they have Giannis and Bam on one team just because of the shooters spacing them out. But this is an exceptionally stronger team than they were last year. They're not going to be any play-in team. And the Celtics, obviously, they're the jokes of this entire offseason, giving up Jaylen Brown for merely nothing. However, they're still not a bad team. They're going to hold up their own. They're going to be very respectable. I think they could fight for a 2 or 3 seed in this regular season. And Cavs, I still have my doubts with them in the playoffs, but they're a great team. And when push comes to shove, they're not just going to be an easy out for anyone in the Eastern Conference. So with these many squads that the Knicks are going to have to go up against, I think you need a guy like LeBron that can kind of just get the team reeled in and push them over the edge.
Yeah, so I was going to wait to bring this up later into the episode, but since, you kind of brought it up now, sort of the East versus the West debate, I think is a really interesting one now. I know I had my famous hot take on our first ever episode about how I think the West is going to win it the next 5 years, but I think the Thunder and the Spurs, like we've mentioned time and time again, are going to be the class of the NBA for at least the next couple of years. But taking a look outside of those teams, do you believe that the Eastern Conference is now the deeper conference as opposed to the West?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. I'm still top to bottom. I'll give it to the Eastern Conference. I really do think so, top to bottom. But if you're saying which conference is harder to get through come postseason time, I'm still going to give it to the West because at the end of the day, if you do want to get to the top of that mountain in the West, you're going to have to go through at least a Spurs, maybe a Spurs and a Thunder. You're going to have to go through the Nuggets. You're going to have to go through the Timberwolves. They're still not just some terrible team that you can shove to the side. They're still good. Luka's going to be healthy with the Lakers. And then the Rockets, we have no idea what we're going to get from them. However, if you're taking all those teams top to bottom, I think the Eastern Conference is a better conference. But to get out of there and to make the NBA championship, I do think the West will be a harder road.
Yeah, for teams not named the Thunder and the Spurs, those are probably going to be the 1 and 2 seeds. So you're going to have to beat both of them, assuming that they
Yep.
don't get upset. So I agree with you. That's probably the harder road. But I do think that what's so crazy is that the East, I think, is now the better conference and it's the deeper conference.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because a couple of years ago, if you would have told me that, I would have been like, "You're nuts. You're crazy. Like, what did everyone in the West get hurt or get traded to the East?" And now,
Kind of. Kind of.
yeah, not necessarily wrong there, but now you obviously have the Sixers, who will probably be the betting favorites. I mean, this is one of the most loaded starting fives I think we've ever seen in the NBA, possibly of all time. The question is going to be their depth. We can get to that in a moment, but you look at them staying in that division. I mean, the Knicks are obviously the defending champs. If the Kawhi trade does go through, you're going to have them, and you're still going to have the Celtics, who are going to be a solid team. With Giannis going to the Heat, you're obviously going to have them, and then you have even some of the younger teams like the Hornets, the Hawks, and the Wizards, who are going to be pretty frisky as well. And that doesn't even mention the Cavs, who are just in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Pistons are going to be a little bit worse of a team, I think, but with Cade Cunningham on that team, I still expect them to be a playoff roster and a playoff squad. You look at the Magic, that's a team who, after firing Jamal Mosley, is expecting themselves to take that next step. And I think the West, there's just too many questions because we don't know what the LaMelo Ant era in Minnesota is going to look like. I am higher on the Rockets than I think most people just because I think they were just so in need of a point guard last year, and they're getting that from within with Fred VanVleet coming back. As a Warriors fan, I watched that 7-game series in the first round, Warriors Rockets, and the Warriors were just the more veteran team who looked like they'd been there before, but the Rockets looked like they were on the come up. And then without a point guard, they were just lost last year, and things kind of got out of whack. But for me, I think some of the teams in the 5-6 range are better than the Lakers. I'm just not that high on the Lakers. I think they're going to be able to put up points, obviously, but it's so hard to build your team around two guards who can't defend. And that's what you have in Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves. So the pendulum felt like it was heavily swayed towards the West, and just as quickly, it now feels like it's slightly in the favor of the East. And it's going to make it a really interesting playoffs because honestly, you look at 1 through 8, and we'll obviously have to see once the postseason standings come out and the playoff bracket set. But I could honestly see like any of those series, first round series, going 7 games, and any team winning in the first round because I think the East is a lot of parity now, and we do have some top level talent, but there are going to be a lot of very good teams now in the Eastern Conference, which is not what we've been able to say the past couple of years.
All right, I'm putting you on the spotlight on you. You gotta pick one team right now. I know we're a long ways away from the season. One team right now to come out of the Eastern Conference next year. Who are we picking?
So I don't think it's going to be Philadelphia. I think my pick is going to be. I think I'm sticking with the Knicks right now. For now, I think I'm going with New York. Based on what I saw they could do in the playoffs, where they finally put things together. You obviously have Mike Brown and their supporting staff coming back. I think they beat Philly in the Eastern Conference Finals. I just don't think any of the other teams are quite ready to get there. You look at the Cavs, I just don't think a James Harden-led team is ever going to get to an NBA Finals again. I mean, a James Harden-led team has never gotten there.
Oh,
Yes, he
never.
made a
They've never
Finals,
been.
but
They've never
he
been. Yeah.
he made a Finals, but he was not the reason. He was not the leader of that team. And I
He's
just
coming
feel
off the
like
bench.
you can pick enough flaws in these other teams. You look at the Heat and their lack of shooting. The Heat are going to be a team. I feel like the season's going to end, and we're just going to look around, and like they're going to be kicking themselves. Like we should have added some shooting, or like they're just going to have a couple games where they just cannot score the ball, and it feels like they're the better team, but they're not going to be able to get it done because of that. But I do think it's going to be a Philly New York Eastern Conference Finals. I think the Knicks are just going to play the better brand of basketball, and that's why I have them coming out of the East. One of the biggest stories with this 76ers team is there's not like unless the NBA changes the rules and we play with 2 or 3 balls next year, they have guys who are used to dribbling and shooting the ball a lot. You look at Tyrese Maxey, you look at Jaylen Brown. I do think LeBron is part of him making this decision is accepting a role as not having the ball as much and not being ball dominant, being able to play an off ball role, maybe even being able to lead the bench group a lot. But I also think this is really going to hurt the development of VJ Edgecombe, who's going to be forced to be more of a role player.
Yeah. LeBron, well, roles you don't have to worry about with LeBron. LeBron can play pretty much any role except for the golfer. I mean, he plays a bunch of golf, but doesn't look too strong at it. So I think that's the only role that he doesn't really fit in. But if we're going to say that every team is healthy, which I know for the 76ers is a massive if. I mean, that's not like I don't know, if we hit the green light going on the way home. That's like a if I get struck by lightning twice in a day type of if with Joel Embiid and this 76ers squad. But if we're saying that everyone's healthy, I can't see a world in which you don't put a starting five of Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, LeBron, Jaylen Brown, and Joel Embiid as the number one favorite in the entire Eastern Conference. I don't see how a team's going to be able to deal with that team because that starting five has everything. It's not like they're lacking size. They're not lacking shooting. They're not lacking playmaking or speed or athleticism. So on a defensive end, there's no reason that this starting five shouldn't be one of the best defenses in the entire league. Because while LeBron, he's getting to the older age, when it comes postseason, there really hasn't been much attrition at all to LeBron's game. And I still think he can slide those puppies and put up a good defensive performance, which we actually saw this past postseason with the Lakers. And there's no excuse if everyone's healthy why this 76ers starting five is not one of the best offensive and defensive squads in the entire league.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason LeBron picked Philadelphia is the fact that he knows he doesn't have to play 82 regular
Yep.
season games. He knows he doesn't even have to play 40 or 50 regular season games. If you take LeBron and Embiid out of the lineup for a majority of the regular season games, I think they believe that the Sixers are still good enough with Maxey, Edgecombe, and Jaylen Brown to get them to at least a 4 or 5 seed in the playoffs. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons why he chose them is because he's like, okay, I'm going to be able to take care of my body and I'm going to be able to make sure that I'm fresh going into the playoffs. Even if him and Embiid don't have injury issues in the regular season, again, a big if, but I don't expect them to play more than 60 games. I think they're going to be
Yeah.
sitting a lot of games because they know they just need to be healthy. It doesn't even matter if, they're the 6, 7, or 8 seed. Those starting five, like you mentioned, are probably going to be favored in any series they would go up against. So I do think that injuries are probably going to be the biggest downfall if you're trying to point one and figure one out for them. It'll also be interesting to see how Embiid reacts to playing with LeBron because the last couple seasons, I don't know what's going on in Embiid's life, how injured he actually was, but I don't think there was any real effort to play through injuries or to be out there and I don't think he was grinding rehab and stuff so that he was healthy for the playoffs. Where I think you add LeBron to a team, LeBron's been in the league, 23? This will be his 24th year. LeBron's going to be the alpha on the team now. It's not going to be Embiid like it always has been. And now that LeBron's the alpha, Embiid has to fall in line with what LeBron wants because I think Maxey, Edgecombe, and Jaylen Brown are going to fall in line with what LeBron wants over what Embiid wants. And so I think this addition might urge Embiid to take care of his body a little more, to make sure he's healthy a little more, and to play through some other stuff and to not be a baby about injuries, which I think LeBron realized he had some power in that. And it's going to be interesting to see if we now see Embiid maybe play a little more. And it's just the question with him is always injuries. And obviously, listen, he's a 7-footer. He's playing in the NBA. It's not his fault that he gets hurt all the time. He didn't choose to be born with an injury-prone body. But he also probably could be playing through some more of this. But that's the strength of the Sixers, I think, is at least in the regular season, they don't need these five guys to all play 82 games. I mean, we know they have a lack of depth, but if just 3 or 4 of them are out there, they're probably still going to be favored over most teams they play.
Yeah. So I think the real question with the Sixers, it's very obvious. There's two simple questions. It's health, and then it's their depth. And with the 76ers coming off the bench, the only two guys that you can really trust, I personally think it's only one, and it's Anthony Simons. You also do have a Dean Wade. However, after watching those Cavs series, Dean Wade almost looked invisible out there on the offensive end. I mean, sure, he was an okay defender, but offensively, it looked like he was doing merely nothing. However, LeBron James isn't just a superstar. He's a superstar that almost every single player, other than my guy Russell Westbrook, wants to play with. So 76ers could have some fun getting some possible free agents on a little money. So I'd love to hear your takes. I'm going to throw out a couple guys that are still free agents that have already made well enough money in the league. They're not worried about that, and maybe they just want to get a chance at that ring that they've never had. First of all, I know it's been a rough couple of past years, but Bradley Beal is a free agent. DeMar DeRozan, a guy who's made so much money. He's played in this league forever. He has more points than a Curry, than a Larry Bird. He's got more points than all of these living legends. So DeMar DeRozan, and then another young, very interesting one who could bet on himself, a Jonathan Kuminga. Do you think any of those guys are looking out into the 76ers team saying, maybe if I bet on myself, I could get a ring, and then for a younger guy like Kuminga, maybe if I bet on myself, I get a bigger spot on the roster as like a guy coming off the bench, a bigger voice, and maybe I get the big payday a year or two later.
Yeah, first of all, when has anybody in the NBA ever made enough money? I mean,
Well, LeBron's made enough money.
if we've learned one thing about these NBA players, it's that they'll go take a bag to play in Sacramento or wherever it may be over that. But no, I do like the
Whoa,
point you
whoa, I
brought
don't,
up,
whoa.
and
I don't know if that was a shot at Russ, but Russ did not take a bag. He
no, it
took a
wasn't.
massive pay
I
cut.
was just trying to pick an obscure city that maybe DeRozan would go sign a 2 or 3 year deal for Levine, who they just threw a bunch of money at, and those two obviously didn't work out there. But out of the guys you brought up, I just the thing is, whenever LeBron's on a team, he handpicks the roster, and he pretty much handpicks the coach usually as well. And I don't know, this is just me speculating. LeBron doesn't seem like the type of guy that wants to deal with the attitude problems that we've seen from Jonathan Kuminga in his years in the league, and especially with the Warriors. And so I could see him being like, yeah, I don't want that dude on my team. I do like the DeMar DeRozan fit. I'm glad you brought that one up because that's a guy who's a veteran. He's had lots of success. Again, he doesn't need to play all 82 games, but he's going to be able to shoot and score the ball if they need it, which in a bench role, maybe. Obviously, their starting lineup, they don't necessarily need some of that. And then I hope they don't go get Bradley Beal just because I'm not a Bradley Beal guy. I think he doesn't really defend, and I think he's just one of those guys who can average 25 a game if he's on one of the worst teams in the league, but I don't really see him being. I mean, yeah, if you put him on this team, he's probably going to contribute and he's not going to make them worse. But I don't think Kuminga or Beal fits as well as DeMar DeRozan does. One interesting one to keep an eye out for is as hard as Draymond Green was recruiting LeBron to the Golden State Warriors, he is still technically a free agent. And
Yeah.
maybe it's a trade deadline move. Maybe he's willing to sign for something else. I don't think he would ditch Curry and the Warriors like that. But I mean, he's been one of the biggest LeBron Glazers that there is. And still being a free agent, I mean, I don't think it's out of the picture for him to somehow end up at the 76ers post trade deadline when we look back on it. But yeah, I mean, LeBron obviously taking this pay cut, they are able to free up some money for other guys. You look at the next five, and it's LeBaron Philon, Anthony Simons, Justin Edwards, Dean Wade, Adem Bona, and then they also have Ariel Huckporty. I do like that they're deepest at the center position because Embiid's probably the one most likely to not be on the floor if we're going to pick anybody. That's not a lot of depth, but the weakest spot is probably the forward position. But I think Edgecombe and Brown are going to be out there almost every night playing, 30, 35 minutes a game. I think that's probably where you can be the weakest. And then you mentioned the guards, Anthony Simons, and then LeBaron Philon is an absolute bucket coming out of Alabama. So yeah, it's not obviously the deepest team, and their depth might not be as bad as a team like the Heat. But I think they have enough where they can just easily, even if they do roll out the starting five, they can easily pull one of them a couple minutes in to run with the second unit. Where I think they have a lot of flexibility because of the star power they have. So I'm not as worried about the depth with this team because listen, if we get a 10 or 20 games into the season, or it's not even until the trade deadline, and you have LeBron James and you have a depth problem, trust me, their front office, Bob Myers, they're going to be aggressive and they're going to go get somebody.
I mean, we just saw the tweet coming out from LeBron. He said this wasn't about money and it wasn't even about his family. It was about going to a team that he thinks has a chance at winning it all and that he can win it all with. And if he's giving that notice to a team and the team says, yes, we're all in on your timeline, which is at max 2 years, it seems like, at max, we're all in with you. I promise you when that deadline comes, they're not going to say, oh, well, we want to keep these picks for the future. They're going to say, here's all our first rounders, here's all our second rounders, and take them for any shooter 3-and-D guy we need. So I think they're going to do it if they need to be. And then they have Nick Nurse. We talked about the head coach. He's got championship pedigree. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, him and LeBron have never been together, but I think LeBron's a pretty easy guy to coach. I mean, we've talked about it before on the show before. We both think he's the GOAT, but he also might be the GOAT diva in the NBA when it comes to LeBron. However, I still don't think he's a very difficult guy to coach. One thing that's going to be very interesting, LeBron, he can take a lesser role. We thought it was crazy when he took that step back and he said, okay, I'll be the third guy. There's a chance he could be the fourth, and on some nights he could be the fifth guy to get the ball and to go get a bucket for this team, falling behind the other four starters. I'm saying immediately he's probably number 4. I think VJ Edgecombe is the only starter that comes before him. But I mean, how are you going to tell a guy like Joel Embiid, a guy like Jaylen Brown, and Tyrese Maxey, both just entering their primes, to say, yeah, you need to give the ball up to a 42-year-old LeBron James, which I don't think they will, but I don't think LeBron is against that until postseason. However, when it comes to postseason, I think everyone just wants to win, and if you want to win, you usually give the ball to LeBron.
Yeah, you mentioned Nick Nurse, and he certainly had his fair share of LeBron coaching the Raptors against. It was a later part of LeBron's second tenure in Cleveland, but still, he was the coach in 2018 and 2019. 2018 when the Cavs made the finals that year, and then obviously in 2019 when the Raptors finally broke through, but because the Cavs were falling apart. You mentioned, we talked about the not having enough balls to go around because they're all going to be, shoot first guys. And I think this is a regular season where we see, I'm not going to say LeBron averages 10 points a game, but I think he's really going to defer in the regular season to some of these other guys and to let them have their moments. Whereas when the playoff comes around, I think LeBron's going to be kind of the main option on this team. But the reason that Jaylen Brown just left Boston was because he went on Twitch and said that it was the most fun he's ever had because he was the guy. And now he's going to a team where Joel Embiid used to be the guy. Tyrese Maxey has become the guy, and you just brought the GOAT in. So it's not like Yeah, maybe Tatum took his spotlight a little bit and he wasn't the number one option. He was 1B instead. But it's not like Jaylen Brown's, everyone's going to be bowing down to him and looking at him to facilitate. I mean, this is a Sixers offense that was running through Maxey and Embiid. And now Jaylen Brown joins those two, and now you bring in LeBron and you bring in VJ Edgecombe, well, they didn't bring him in, they drafted him, but he wants to take that next step. He wants to show his worth, in a couple of years when he's up for an extension. And I'm just really interested to see like what kind of role Jaylen Brown's going to fit into because he's the one that had all the drama. For as much as we want to clown the Celtics for making one of the worst trades in NBA history, it's because Jaylen Brown has had some off the court issues where he doesn't seem content deferring to other guys, and he's going to have to do that, especially in the playoffs. Where I wouldn't be surprised if we see some visible frustration early on and even later on in the playoffs between some of these guys. Is there's just not enough shots to go around for all of them, and it's going to take a level of maturity that I'm not sure all these guys have to play with each other and to win together. I know LeBron's going to do what it takes to win, but can this whole starting five align and do it? And I think it helps to have a veteran coach in Nick Nurse who's won a title and who's seen what it takes to win. But look at the Raptors; that was a really well built team. You had Kyle Lowry there, and then you brought in Kawhi to go in fit with pieces like OG Anunoby, Marc Gasol, but it takes a different coaching philosophy to win with a super team.
Yeah, 100%. That Raptors team was built just like the Knicks were this year. So one really good superstar, then a bunch of great role players or higher level role players, not even role players at the end of the day. But as much as I give him hate and I'm not the biggest Jaylen Brown fan of all time, I do think he doesn't get enough credit where it's due. I mean, this is a guy that came into the league in 2016. He was drafted third overall by the Celtics, and I'm sure everyone back home was telling him, hey, you're everything in this world. You're the best at everything. I'm sure that's what a lot of these guys are told, especially when they go third overall to a team and a franchise like the Celtics. And from 2016 up until this year, or I guess the year before because Tatum was hurt, sure, maybe he didn't love it, but at the end of the day, he did defer to Jason Tatum on almost every level when it came to getting the ball late game, when it came to all the news and your name being in the media for when they got wins, when it came to every single thing, he did bow down or at least defer to Jason Tatum, even though he may have not liked it. Even after the Celtics put him up on the trade block and said, here, take Jaylen Brown. We want Kevin Durant. You can take him. Usually a guy who's a superstar doesn't hear his name in trade conversations and just say, okay, well, I guess they want to trade me. That's okay. That's not how they go about it. They're a superstar. They know their worth. So as much as we do kind of give him slack or hate for how he's controlled himself and been on Twitch lately, I do think Jaylen Brown doesn't get enough flowers where he should for how he's been able to defer to some other players and some of that spotlight. And I think he's going to do it. I really do. I think he's heard all that news. And I think he's heard all that talk, and he's just going to go out there and kill it this year. And I don't think he's going to try to get his name in the headlines every single week like he has been this offseason. But we'll see.
Yeah, and he's certainly going to have that chance to prove it, not only to the Celtics, but to the rest of the league for undervaluing him. The last thing I really want to touch on is the NBA media and just the coverage of this whole LeBron summer and what's happened. So he first of all, he waits till Bronny gets paid by the Lakers, and then he decides that he wants to leave the
It's a good
Lakers.
father move. Come on. Don't hate that.
No, I'm not hating it, but it's just kind of like funny how it works out. And he decides he's leaving the Lakers before the 76ers get Jaylen Brown. So when LeBron said a few things since he left the Lakers. He said, I would have gone to the Knicks if they didn't win the title, and I thought this was the end of my career. Now, do I believe either of those? Not necessarily. The Knicks one's a little more believable. I think LeBron knew he had more basketball in him after carrying the Lakers past the Rockets in the first round this past season. However, initially it was, man, the Warriors. He wants to play with Steph. Draymond's his best friend. He's recruiting him hard. And then it's like, all right, how could he not go back to Cleveland? That's his home. He's going to go his third stint there. They have the bigs. They have the guards. Your background says it all. And then and then actually, before all that, it was Philadelphia out of nowhere made this strong pitch, and it was like LeBron's in Philadelphia. There was something with Rich Paul or one of his friends going on there, and it was like, wait, is Philly really going to sign LeBron? And we thought he was going to sign the next day or two. And then some more time passed, and it was like, okay, actually, Miami feels like he could go back there, and maybe he's what pushes them over to win a title. And then like a second round of the same teams came up where again it was the Warriors a strong push. And then this past week it felt like it was back to Miami. It felt like Miami was, you know, in the leading the charge again. And then you had the false report where they posted July 27th LeBron's press conference in Miami. And you had teams and media, making fun of that, but it was like, wait, are they really about to sign him? They actually just messed up and leaked it. And then all of a sudden he just announces he's going to the Philadelphia 76ers. And so it's like, I really want to know when LeBron decided, when this decision actually came, because a lot of times you look at Aaron Rodgers with the Steelers, he knew way ahead of time that he was going to go to the Pittsburgh. I mean, the guys play the game for this long. It's all they know. They love it. If they have a chance to keep playing, they're going to keep playing. And Rodgers' only chance was with the Steelers, so you kind of knew he was going to go there. But LeBron had chances with a lot of good and appealing franchises to the point where I really don't think he knew where he wanted to go. And that's what made following it so cool because everyone felt like they had the newest story, the newest, gossip about what sign was pointing LeBron where. And at the end of the day, I don't know about you, but this surprised me, especially at the time that it came, that it was Philadelphia.
Yeah, I can end on one last thought. I agree. I was honestly expecting a Cleveland return. And like you said, I don't think LeBron's bluffing about not knowing where he wanted to go. And I think for him, it was a good move because if he jumped the gun and he signed with one of those teams you were talking about, like maybe the Warriors when it was early on, or maybe Cleveland early on, then he would have signed before all of this Jaylen Brown stuff had happened. And the 76ers wouldn't have even been in the picture. But like you said, immediately after Jaylen Brown signed, it was like 24 or 48 hours later after that trade happened, it was like 76ers are now at the top of the LeBron James talks. And yeah, that kind of got washed away once Cleveland and Miami gave a couple more of their pitches. And Steph Curry goes, "Oh, well, our golf is beautiful." Like, okay, Curry, I'm sorry, but he's not going there anymore. But I seriously believe him if he says he didn't know where he was going to go up until this past week. I do think he's known for at least a week. I can only beat a dead horse for so long. There's Aaron Rodgers and there's LeBron James, the two biggest divas in all of Major League sports. They want all the attention on them. They want all the eyes on them. Sure, maybe they've earned it, but I think he's known for at least a week, and I think he's holding off. And now he finally gave us the news, and just like that, you got a couple of pawns like us talking about it, breaking it down. I'm sure a lot of people out there are talking about it at the lunch table and listening to all of their favorite analysts talk about it. So, LeBron, you did your thing. Congratulations. This year's going to be a fun one. And mark
Yeah.
my words, I can end on a little bit of a hot take. 2 years. If he plays 2 years with the 76ers, that's the only if. Forget about the injuries. If he plays this season and next season with the 76ers, they're going to bring home the hardware once. At least
Yeah.
once.
Yeah, it is a hot take, but it's also not. I think it's, one of those things where it's like there's so many ifs, but also if those ifs get answered, why would they not win it? A couple notes I want to end on. First of all, I'm not going to miss the ESPN notifications about LeBron not making his decision yet,
No,
or not
we
ready to
won't
make his
miss those.
decision. I feel like we were getting to the point where we were getting 3 ESPN notifications a day. LeBron not ready yet. Here's what LeBron's waiting for. LeBron still not ready to make his decision, says agent Rich Paul. And it was like, all right, at the end of the day, I don't really care if he's still not ready to make his decision. Obviously, I care, but I don't need the ESPN notification about it. Just tell me when he does sign, or tell me some storyline that's real evidence that is pointing to where he's going to sign, not that he just hasn't made his decision yet. The other thing is, the offseason rolls on for the rest of the league. I mean, obviously it still rolls on for the 76ers, but you look at a team like the Warriors, they have 3 or 4 spots that they still need to fill on their roster. And they still have a lot of money, and Draymond Green's a free agent, so a lot of that might go towards him. But, what do the Cavs do? They're probably going to extend James Harden now. And what do the Heat do? They have to fill out, some more pieces on their roster. So for these other teams, they have to, go to their plan B and go to their next move and say, okay, we didn't get LeBron, but for the Heat, we just traded for Giannis. For the Warriors, we have an aging roster with our franchise cornerstone who has a couple of years left and wants to contend. And for the Cavs, we just made the Eastern Conference Finals. These aren't teams who are like, oh, we didn't get LeBron, it's time to sell and tank. These are teams who are like, how can we figure out another way to compete and host the trophy that LeBron and the Sixers are possibly going to be the favorites to do now?
They won't be favorites. Thunder and Spurs will still be ahead of them.
I agree,
Maybe the
but
favorites in everyone's heart, but no.
yeah, It's going to be interesting to see how the league and the fans and just the culture of the NBA like roots for or against the 76ers. Do you have all the LeBron fans who have followed him his whole career all of a sudden jumping on the Philly bandwagon? You know,
Yeah.
do you have these other fans who are, mutual NBA fans who are like, man, it's going to be fun to watch the Sixers? Or do you have guys being like, man, he just joined a loaded roster. I don't want them. Or, fans of the Knicks and the Celtics who are going to be so anti-Philly now that it's just going to be hilarious.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be a fun one.
That'll
Well, I
do
think
it.
that does it for this shorts. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope you guys are as excited to watch LeBron in his new home as we are. And peace.